Kamala Harris has a man problem. White dudes for Harris isn't working, and the hombres don't trust her.
Right now, leaning towards Trump, but I haven't made a decision. I'm also concerned about the way I feel President Biden was pushed aside.
Oh.
And as Obama said, Harris also has a problem with the brothers.
Well, now Joe Biden's out and Kamala's in. What do you think of her?
Garbage.
She's for herself.
I don't know what she did when she was the vice president. I don't know what she's going to do now.
She's part of the problem of the country.
A lot of people vote because she's black. You don't vote for nobody because of their color, you know. You vote for what good they can do. No, she could be the devil in disguise.
Donors are admitting men are gone. But Democrats say Kamala Harris isn't the issue. Men are. And they should see a psychiatrist.
I think men are in crisis, actually, in this country. I think that plays out different ways. And not all men are in crisis, of course. And not all men are just at home listening to Joe Rogan, being angry or being recruited to fascism. Some just need therapy, like we all do. We need to have a real conversation about that rather than allowing this kind of drift toward this faux masculinity that we see Donald Trump evincing.
Do you really think Kamala's losing because men are in crisis? No. Real men aren't in crisis. But these guys are.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse. I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually. Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story. That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful. That's not how my mama raised me. I love women. I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge. And I'm man enough to help them win.
So if you don't cry in front of your horse or at Love Actually, you're not a real man. And you need to see a shrink who will prescribe you medication that'll turn you into a zombie and allow you to enjoy being bossed around by a pretty woman.
I just hope that all the women here tonight talk to all the men that aren't here tonight, and all you brave men that are here tonight. Talk to all the other men that aren't here tonight. And let's just get it going. Enough with the fighting. Let's get to the uniting. Let's get to the joy.
That's the Democrats' idea of a brave man. Not a cop or a soldier or a guy who gets shot and pops back up. Democrats believe a brave man goes to Kamala rallies and nags their buddies into voting Democrat. But if a pretty woman doesn't do it for you, maybe the Messiah can turn you on.
I'm sorry, gentlemen. I've noticed this especially with some men who seem to think Trump's behavior, the bullying and the putting people down, is a sign of strength. And I am here to tell you that is not what real strength is.
Don't get it twisted, fellas. This is what a real man looks like. This is the kind of strapping masculinity that Democrats idolize. Michelle, I'll be right up. I'm almost finished my set. The kind of guy that loves vanilla soft serve. Take me out to the ball game, Barry. And then he told black men, vote for Kamala or you ain't black.
We have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. You're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly now, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president.
Trump says Kamala may have lost another brother. Quote, I think Obama will be voting for me because he doesn't like the fact that Kamala is an extremely low IQ person. Obama's trying to glue his shattered coalition back together, but it's going to take more than Barry scolding black men as sexist race traitors to win the male vote. Democrats know it.
Why are black men being lectured to?
Why are black men being belittled? For him to single out black men is wrong. And some of the black men that I have talked to have their reasons why they want to vote a different way. Unless President Barack Obama is going to go out and lecture every other group of men from other identity groups, my message for Democrats is don't bring it here to black men who, by and large, don't vote much differently from black women.
Ooh, sounds like Barry's in trouble with the ladies. So they're moving on to plan B, slapping a helmet on Coach Walz and throwing him into the game to tackle white guys and drag them to the polls. Walz to launch media blitz to woo male voters. Walz wooing dudes can only mean one thing. Pheasant hunts, football games, and Michael Strahan.
When it comes to President Biden and the presidency, would you, or do you see anything that you would have done different?
Yeah, and look, as a governor, I was asked to be governor of this state when Donald Trump was president and when Joe Biden was there. I think the thing that drew me to this ticket, and I think what the vice president's talking about, is that her values on these hasn't changed.
So it makes me want to ask you, do you think that Biden's done everything right?
Well, look, I don't know if any of us do everything right, but I can tell you he's done everything in the best interest of the American public.
Kamala is doing so badly with men that now she's just identifying as Biden. And it got worse.
He said, I think all of us know the Electoral College needs to go. But the campaign came out later that night, and they said that's not their stance.
Yeah. The campaign's position is clear, that that's not their position. Their position and my position is to make sure that everybody understands their vote, no matter what state they're in, matters.
So that's something that you and Vice President Harris disagree on?
I have spoken about it in the past, that she's been very clear on this, and the campaign, and my position is the campaign's position.
The only thing clear about that was that Coach Walz spoke out of turn and the campaign bent him over their knee and spanked him. This election isn't about men supporting women and blacks supporting Kamala. None of that identity politics matters. It's about making the country better. And if you've made it worse and you say you're the same as the guy who made it that way and don't have a plan to fix it, then everything you're saying is just fluff.
So when we think about what's at stake in this election, whoa, it's packed with some stuff. It's packed with some fundamental stuff. I say rather articulately.
So we watched her speech, so you don't have to. And we were waiting for her to tell us the fundamental stuff that's at stake. And she just told a long, boring story about John McCain. Meghan McCain, after tweeting, "Don't make me tell you what my father really thought about Kamala Harris." Meanwhile, on the Republican side, there's not a lot of scolding and bedwetting. What we see is quiet confidence. Trump's finishing this race in a disciplined manner, staying out of the media booby traps, and connecting with new voters on a different level.
I'm good with names, you know.
You are.
You're very good with names. I mean, Pocahontas.
Yeah.
We have names.
What about, and there was, Tampon Tim was good. What about,
The problem with Tampon Tim, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
In other words,
it's a mouthful.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Tampon. And you can't stutter it through when you follow it. It's really a lousy word to say.
Yeah.
But it's quite accurate. When you put the names together, it's a little, you got to be able to pume. No, you got to be able to put it out there.
Trump's winning the battle for men by being himself, while Kamala's being somebody else, Joe Biden. And men weren't going to vote for Joe Biden either. That's why Barry cooed him. He was going to lose, and Kamala may lose now too. Don't blame that on American men. American men didn't blow up the border and break the dollar. A real man never would have done that. Real men accept responsibility for their actions. And Democrats couldn't do that. They couldn't let Biden run, accept the loss, and try harder next election. They had to whack him and run Kamala. And now it's the same result for the same reason. Democrats have performance issues, and they need to get that treated. Former mayor of Huntington Beach and former UFC world champ, Tito Ortiz. What's up, Tito?
How you doing, Jesse? Good to see you.
You too. So what's with this whole mail thing? Everyone's saying it's all our fault Kamala's losing.
Well, I think the masculinity is something that every man needs, especially for our family. If you want to raise a family the right way, with just being a good person, having the things, the values, the morals, to respect women, to be a real man in this country right now, it takes two things. There's the cojones what we need to be good men. And this is something that they're trying to steer away. And I really think at the end of the day, this country needs to come together. Kamala shows her lies, one after another after another. And you can tell a liar right off the bat is when they laugh, because they can't think of something bright to say, so they laugh about the situation they're in because they can't think of something proper to say.
Yeah, Gutfeld's always giggling on the 5. It's always because he's got nothing there. Tito, you are...
But he's the comedian, so that's totally different.
We'll let it slide. We love Greg. You're around a lot of guys, all types of people, rich, poor, black, white, whatever. When they talk about Kamala Harris, when you bring up Kamala Harris, what do they say about her?
She's a liar. They see right through all of her baloney. They see right through everything she says, because all of a sudden she's flip-flopping. And it's politics, man. It's politics at the end of the day. But everything that Trump has always said, he stuck to the program. He said, and he kept the promise. He said the promise, and he kept those promises. And now the things he's saying now, it's even more intriguing to the American people, the American voters. Not only just American voters, our Latino voters that are here in America. It's important because, you know, the things that we have is our 3Fs, family, faith, and freedom. And we have our family that always keeps strong through Christianity. God is great. We have our faith. Our faith is number one, and that is very, very understandable. But our freedom, that's what everybody comes from med school over here for, is our freedom that we have in America. From our forefathers that fought for that, this is really important. And right now, we're going to continue to keep our freedom. And number one, freedom of speech. That is something that we need to continue to have. Thankful for Elon Musk that he's done by buying Twitter and turning it into X to get him our freedom of speech and continue doing that. After watching him jump up and down behind Trump, it shows how intrigued and how important this country is to him. He's willing to support Trump and give him what he needs to win the presidency. And I think all the American people, all the Latinos, all the blacks, everybody need to come together as us as Americans and fight for this country and swamp the vote. That's what we need to do. Trump 2024, that's what we need.
Inspiring words from the champ. Tito Ortiz, great to see you, and I'll see you next time I'm down in Florida, all right?
All right, God bless. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, you too. Have a great weekend. Now let's bring in author of Black Victim to Black Victor, Adam Coleman. So, Adam, you hear Barack Obama lecture all black men. You guys need to line up. You need to vote Kamala Harris. He doesn't really explain why. He just kind of tells you that's what you need to do. How do you feel about that?
I feel insulted by it. It's actually the same type of rhetoric that led for me to leave the Democratic Party a number of years ago and become an independent myself. The idea that we are owed, or a Democratic Party is owed our vote, whereas every other demographic is sought after. You know, they seek for the Latino vote, and what do they want? How do we convince them? But no one is supposed to convince us. We're just supposed to do it. We're supposed to be a loyal voter bloc. But when people question what kind of help we've been receiving, what exactly does it benefit us to vote for a Democratic Party blindly? And why are we being insulted if we ask these questions? We just get more insults.
Why do you believe that it's expected of you to vote Democrat? You say that other demographic groups, they try to earn that vote. They try to persuade. They try to have a conversation. Why is it differently calculated with the black community?
Well,
is it because you've been so loyal for so long?
I think that's part of it. And I think it's very complicated as far as why majority of black Americans vote for the Democratic Party. Sometimes it's just pragmatism. But other times I believe that we've been sold out by people we call black leaders, when really they're just in it for themselves. And we've been sold this idea that we have to vote as a bloc instead of as individuals who want the best for everybody, including ourselves. So the idea that we want something other than better economics for ourselves, a secure border to make sure that we're safe in this country, the same type of thing that everybody else wants, the idea that we want something so foreign, and even with that, we have to be ignored because of it, I think is the reason why we're here.
You're not getting respected as individuals. You're being treated as a big voting bloc.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll see if that voting bloc holds it together as it usually does. Could be different this time around. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Making America hot again. Plus, Kamala in Espanol ahead on primetime. Today, Trump announced his plan to deport migrant criminals and make America safe again.
In honor of Jocelyn, Nungari, Lakin, Riley, beautiful Lakin, Rachel, Morin, and all of the others that are dead and or mortally wounded at the hands of migrants who should never have been allowed into our country, I'm announcing today that upon taking office, we will have an Operation Aurora at the federal level. To expedite the removals of these savage gangs.
Trump will be invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Yeah, an authority that allows the president to detain and deport foreign nationals who've invaded the country without a hearing. This is what it'll look like.
We will send elite squads of ICE, Border Patrol, and federal law enforcement officers to hunt down, arrest, and deport every last illegal alien gang member until there is not a single one left in this country. And if they come back into our country, they will be told it is an automatic 10-year sentence in jail with no possibility of parole. And I'm hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer.
So that right there is a real solution to one of America's biggest problems. What's Kamala doing? She's pandering to Hispanics with a new accent.
What would your administration do differently in the case of Milton?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, and I hope your family is okay and your home is okay.
Yes, they are, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, what about the border? Hispanic Americans want a secure border, just like every American. And they know Joe and Kamala haven't delivered.
What would you do differently from what's been done in the Biden administration to make sure that the border is secure and orderly?
I was the top law enforcement officer of the biggest state in this country, California, that is also a border state. I have taken on transnational criminal organizations. I have taken on transnational criminal organizations that traffic in guns, drugs, and human beings, and I've prosecuted them. So I will put my record up against anyone in terms of the work I have always done and will always do to ensure we have a secure border.
She didn't answer the question because she already answered it Tuesday. She wouldn't do anything different than Joe. Kamala doesn't have a plan. Her plan is Joe's plan, which is open sesame. She's just got the same tired talking points, and the audience is noticing. Look at how one audience member rolls her eyes and says word for word what Kamala says, almost like she's heard it all before.
Unlike my opponent, who got handed $400 million on a silver tray and filed for bankruptcy 6 times.
Kamala's axe wearing thin. Kamala Harris's lead with Latinos is shrinking. And now all the money Democrats invested in getting souls to the polls and ballot harvesting may be backfiring. Get this. Wisconsin Democrats are very worried about Kamala Harris's vote margins in Milwaukee. The thinking is that their get-out-to-vote efforts might be inadvertently boosting Trump votes among black and Latino men. You heard that. Democrats are worried they're going to be harvesting all of these black and brown ballots, and they're just going to be votes for Trump. American Majority founder Ned Ryan is here. So this border policy is starting to get a little teeth. We're starting to see what it looks like. He's going to be invoking acts from the 18th century. We'll see how that plays out. But there is something that you can grab onto there. There is a big effort to uproot these criminal gangs and say sayonara.
Well, I think the gangs are a starting point, Jesse, and then you got to go to the 13,000 or 15,000 known murderers. And then you got to go to the hundreds of thousands of illegals with criminal records. And then you keep going. Jesse, the reason that they have had the open borders, that they have intentionally and in a systematic way, 10, 12, maybe even more million illegals have come in since the Biden administration started, they're importing new voters. Any Republican with just even a couple brain cells should go, we should deport all of them, if for nothing else, self-preservation, so we don't become a single party state. But the fact that Donald Trump is actually framing this out and putting some teeth to it is a very good starting point. But he shouldn't stop with the violent criminals, and he shouldn't stop with the criminal records. He should keep right on going.
They're going to do what they did to California throughout the whole country. California used 100%. To be a red state. I mean, Reagan was governor. Nixon won it. I mean, that used to be a red state. Now look at it. It's a supermajority situation. You'll never get that back. And if they can do that to Texas, what they did to California, the Republicans will never see the White House ever again.
If I was an unethical leftist, and I feel like I'm repeating myself when I say that, whose only moral guiding light is political power, I would be putting illegal immigrants into 6 or 7 key battleground states, Jesse, and trying to get 20, 30, 40,000 of them onto the voter rolls. And if that happens, Jesse, and you lose 6 or 7 key battleground states, you'll never get the White House back. And then at that point, single party rule, they'll just keep importing 10, 12 million every 4 years. That's it.
Yeah, and they're doing that in Virginia. Youngkin is cleaning up the voter rolls, getting rid of the illegals.
They're suing him.
And they're suing him. And we're going to have that story on Monday. But if you're all kosher with the law and you don't think illegals should vote, why are you suing a state that's knocking them off the rolls?
The thing that's interesting to me, Jesse, is it's about 6,000 that Glenn Youngkin and the state of Virginia, where I'm at, have removed from the voter rolls. Why are you going and suing Youngkin within 30 days of the elections over 6,000 non-citizens removed from the voter rolls? First of all, non-citizens. Second of all, are you really concerned that Virginia is going to be that close? I think the DOJ, their acts today really showed a few things. I think they're getting nervous about Virginia. And it's also clear that they fully intend to get non-citizens and keep non-citizens on voter rolls to get political power.
Yeah. Well, we just hope we don't see any Black Panthers with billy clubs like we saw in Philly. Can't do that again. All right. Ned, thank you so much, as always. Have a great weekend and behave yourself.
Thanks, Jesse.
Afghan refugees, election terror, and the CIA. Right back. Fox News alert: an Afghan terrorist that Biden and Harris led into the country was just busted, planning a huge election day attack. And the administration's refusing to answer any questions about it. And it turns out the terrorist worked for the CIA. Senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich has the details.
Jesse, the Homeland Security Secretary only wanted to talk about storm response misinformation and refused to answer questions about national security after Fox confirmed the Afghan man arrested for an election day terror plot worked security for the CIA in Afghanistan before coming to the U.S. with the Biden administration's help after the chaotic Afghanistan withdrawal.
How was this man brought into the U.S.? What screening did he undergo? What did he apply for to get here?
We're here to talk about emergencies and the support that we can deliver to people in desperate need. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Secretary, but we're getting conflicting answers from your agency and from the State Department about a man who was arrested for an election day terror plot. How do you not have those answers prepared?
Jackie, that's not what I said.
The outstanding question is whether this man was radicalized before the U.S. government brought him here or afterward. And people should be concerned about that.
Jackie, your persistence in questioning can be matched by my persistence in answers.
DHS did not reach out with answers, but other administration officials did, saying 27-year-old Nasir Ahmad Tahiti cleared multiple levels of screening to work for the CIA, to come to the U.S. on DHS humanitarian parole, and for special immigrant status, and there were no red flags in any of his background checks. Officials believe sometime in the years that followed, he was radicalized. Court documents show Tahiti planned to die a martyr for ISIS. But questions remain after officials admitted he first came to the country with Operation Allies Welcome, which the DHS Inspector General says had big gaps in vetting and could have allowed in national security risks. Congresswoman Stephanie Bice says the FBI agreed to brief her. They arrested this man in her district, but the DOJ stopped it down. She just wrote a letter to AG Merrick Garland asking what the Justice Department is hiding. Jesse?
Thanks, Jackie. The day before Biden and Harris flew the terrorists into our country, Donald Trump warned that Afghan refugees were not being properly vetted. Listen.
The country has never been more unsafe. We have people pouring in through our southern border, which everyone's forgetting about right now because of the travesty of Afghanistan. And if you look at the people coming in by the hundreds, by the thousands, and these are not the people necessarily that wanted the protection.
Right.
These are people. So are they terrorists? How many terrorists are coming in?
Now, Kamala, on the other hand, said she wouldn't change a thing Joe Biden did in his presidency. That includes the Afghanistan withdrawal and this terror plot that followed. Joe Sweeney is a former CIA general counsel and author of Dangerous Injustice. So when you hear that there's this guy used to work for the CIA and then cleared 3 vets by 3 different U.S. agencies, and then all of a sudden is trying to blow things up on Election Day, what does that tell you?
So it tells me that the Biden-Harris administration, once again, is not being honest with the American people. Now, right from the beginning of this story, this man supposedly served as a security guard in the war zone for the CIA. Now, the CIA has many different types of relationships. There are staff employees like me, thoroughly vetted. There are intelligence assets, thoroughly vetted, having knowing, willful relationships with the CIA. And then there's people like this guy who are at the other end of the spectrum. He was apparently providing security for personnel and facilities overseas. That would have been minimal vetting, and he wouldn't have even known that he was working with the CIA. He would have just known he was protecting U.S. government interests or people, and that he was getting paid by the U.S. government. So right from the beginning, minimal vetting. And then you look at what happened for him to come into the United States. Now, the catchphrase that the Biden-Harris administration has been using is that this person went through rigorous vetting. I can tell you that is an absolute lie, because the checks that were done for someone like this were minimalist vetting. They would have checked his social media activity. They would have done credit reports. And then, yes, exactly, the things that would work if you were in the U.S. But if you're in a war zone, they're meaningless, Jesse. And they would have, they would have done some other checks with state and federal law enforcement. But again, this guy never even lived in the United States. So we're talking minimalist vetting, and really, for someone of this nature, meaningless vetting. So then he comes into the United States, and the Customs and Border Patrol. There was a DHS IG report 2 years ago, September 2022. It was published. It's online. Your viewers can see it. And they said back then, 2 years ago, that this program for bringing in the evacuees was not properly sourced. The vetting wasn't done properly. And as a result, there were national security risks coming into the nation.
I mean, Joe, of course not, Joe. I mean, if this guy, he's got a great credit score, and he's posting about camels on Facebook. Sounds like a great guy. Let's bring him in. That is insane. That is absolute insanity.